For 50 years, we've known the story by heart. Filipinos leave. They sacrifice. They send money home. They build other people's countries while dreaming of retirement in the Philippines. But in 2026, something unprecedented is happening. The data is undeniable, and both the Philippine government and Western nations are desperately trying to control the narrative. Filipinos aren't just staying abroad anymore. They're coming home. But not the way you think. They're negotiating remote contracts, demanding Manila salaries match London rates, and building industries in the Philippines that are gutting talent pipelines in the US, UK, Canada, and Australia. Today, we're revealing the 7 industries where the great reversal is happening, where Filipino talent is no longer asking permission, they're dictating terms. And number 1, it's causing panic in boardrooms from Silicon Valley to Singapore, because once Filipinos prove they can do it from Manila, the entire offshore labor model collapses. So whether you're a Filipino OFW, wondering if you should come home, or you're in the West watching your company's talent pool evaporate, you need to watch until the end. Because this shift is permanent, and it's accelerating. Number 7. Telemedicine specialist nursing. Let's start with something happening in hospitals across the UK, Canada, and Australia that healthcare administrators are desperately trying to keep quiet. In 2026, over 4,500 Filipino nurses have quit their positions in Western hospitals, not to retire, not to switch hospitals, but to provide the exact same services remotely from the Philippines. How is this possible? Telemedicine has exploded. But here's what nobody anticipated. The most critical shortage isn't doctors doing video consultations. It's specialized nurses who can review cases, guide treatment protocols, coordinate care, and train junior staff. And these nurses don't need to be physically present. A cardiac surgery specialist nurse in London earned £52,000. That same nurse, working remotely from Quezon City for 3 different UK hospitals simultaneously, she's now earning £95,000, paying Philippine taxes and cost of living, and seeing her family every single day. But here's where it gets disruptive for Western healthcare. These nurses are forming cooperatives. The Philippine Nursing Consortium, launched in 2025, now represents over 12,000 remote healthcare specialists who collectively bargain with UK, Canadian, and Australian healthcare systems. They're demanding, and getting, Western salaries, Philippine work-life balance, and the ability to work for multiple institutions simultaneously. UK hospitals can't refuse. The alternative is having no specialists at all. And for the 60% of this audience who are Filipino, yes, this means your auntie, your cousin, that classmate who went to Canada in 2019, they might be coming home sooner than you think. For the 40% watching from the US, UK, or Canada, your healthcare system just lost its negotiating leverage. But if that surprised you, wait until you see what's happening to your customer service infrastructure. Number 6. High-value customer experience architecture. For decades, the Philippines was the world's call center. Low wages, English fluency, cultural adaptability. Western companies built entire customer service operations in Manila, Cebu, and Davao. But in 2026, something radical has happened. The call center model is dying, and Filipinos are the ones killing it. Here's why. Artificial intelligence can now handle 80% of routine customer service inquiries. What AI cannot handle is high-value, complex customer relationships, sales closing, enterprise support, crisis management, VIP client relations. And for these roles, companies don't want call center agents. They want customer experience architects who can build relationships, solve complex problems, and generate revenue. Filipinos have spent 25 years mastering exactly these skills. But instead of working for $800 per month in a Makati call center, they're now forming boutique customer experience agencies and charging Western rates for Philippine-based teams. A single Filipino CX specialist can now manage enterprise accounts for 3 different U.S. companies simultaneously, earning $8,000 to $15,000 per month. working from a co-working space in BGC or a beach house in Siargao. The numbers are staggering. Over 38,000 Filipinos have left traditional BPO companies in the past 18 months to form independent agencies or join Philippine-based boutique firms that contract directly with Western clients. And here's the part that should terrify traditional BPO executives. These Filipinos are taking their client relationships with them. When a top-performing agent who's been managing a Fortune 500 account for 5 years says, "I'm going independent, but I'll still handle your account for $12,000 per month instead of the $25,000 per month you're paying my old company." What do you think the client chooses? For Western companies, you're about to pay more for Filipino talent, but you'll pay it directly to Filipinos, not to the outsourcing middlemen. For Filipinos, the BPO career ladder just got demolished. You're either building your own agency or you're being left behind. But while customer service is being revolutionized, something even more fundamental is happening to how buildings get designed. Number 5. Remote architecture and engineering design. In 2026, there's a crisis in the US, UK, Canadian, and Australian construction industries. And it's not about materials or regulations. It's about the architects and engineers who actually design the buildings. Western architecture firms are facing a catastrophic shortage. Senior architects are retiring. Junior architects are leaving for tech jobs. And projects are being delayed by 6 to 18 months, simply waiting for design work. Enter the Filipino solution. Filipino architects and engineers, trained in some of the best universities in Asia, and often with US or UK credentials, have spent years working for Western firms, either abroad or for offshore design centers in Manila. But in 2026, they've stopped working for those firms and started competing with them. Over 200 Philippine-based architectural and engineering firms now provide full design services to US, Canadian, UK, and Australian clients, not as subcontractors, but as primary design architects. The cost advantage? A senior architect in California costs $120,000 to $180,000 annually. A Filipino architect of equivalent experience working from Manila? They're charging $65,000 to $95,000, and they're working on multiple projects simultaneously because time zone differences allow for overnight turnarounds. But here's what's revolutionary. These aren't just cost savings. Filipino architects are now winning international design competitions. In 2025, a Manila-based firm won the design contract for a major civic center in Vancouver. Another won a mixed-use development in Melbourne. A third won a sustainable housing project in Manchester. The narrative has shifted from cheap offshore labor to world-class design at competitive pricing. For Western architecture firms, your juniors are now competing with entire Filipino firms that cost less and deliver faster. For Filipino architects, you no longer need to leave home to work on world-class projects. The projects are coming to you. But if you think that's disruptive, wait until you see what's happening to legal services. Number 4. International legal research and paralegal services. This one operates quietly, but in 2026, it's gutting the business model of law firms across the US, UK, Canada, and Australia. Here's what's happening. A first-year associate at a major law firm in New York bills at $400 to $600 per hour, but earns $190,000 annually. Most of their time? Legal research, document review, contract analysis, case preparation. Work that requires legal expertise, attention to detail, and English fluency, but doesn't require physical presence in a Manhattan office. Filipino lawyers, many with US, UK, or Australian legal training, some with LLM degrees from Harvard, Oxford, or Columbia, have started offering these exact services remotely. And they're not working for legal outsourcing companies. They're forming Philippine-based legal research firms that contract directly with law firms and corporate legal departments. The pricing? $85 to $150 per hour for work that Western firms bill at $400 to $600. Over 15,000 Filipino legal professionals now work in this model, and they're generating $1.2 billion annually in revenue, money that used to go to first and second year associates in New York, London, and Toronto. But here's the part that should concern Western law firms. These Filipino legal researchers are getting so sophisticated that they're now handling depositions, witness prep, and even client communications remotely. Major corporate clients are asking, why am I paying your New York associates $500 per hour when your Manila team does the same work for $120 per hour, with better turnaround times? Law firms don't have a good answer. For Western legal professionals, your firm's profit margins are about to get squeezed, which means fewer partner track positions and more pressure on billable hours. For Filipino lawyers, you no longer need to pass a foreign bar exam or move abroad to work on international cases and earn Western-adjacent salaries. But while legal services are being disrupted, something even more critical is happening to digital security. Number 3. Cybersecurity operations and threat intelligence. Remember how we mentioned earlier that Filipino cybersecurity specialists are the best in the world? Here's the part Western companies are panicking about. They're coming home. In 2026, over 3,800 Filipino cybersecurity professionals have left positions at US, UK, and Canadian companies to join Philippine-based security firms or start their own. Why? Because they can earn $120,000 to $280,000 working remotely from the Philippines instead of $150,000 to $300,000 living in San Francisco or London, where cost of living eats 60% of that salary. But the real disruption is what they're building. Philippine cyber defense hubs are now protecting infrastructure for 47 countries. These aren't outsourcing centers. These are security operations centers, SOCs, that rival anything in Washington or Tel Aviv. And they're staffed by Filipinos who spent years fighting real-world cyber attacks in the Philippines, one of the most targeted nations on Earth for Chinese, Russian, and North Korean cyber operations. Western cybersecurity companies are losing talent they cannot replace. Because you can't just hire someone else. This expertise takes 10 to 15 years of real combat experience to develop. For Western companies, you're now dependent on Philippine-based security teams, and you have zero leverage to prevent them from raising prices. For Filipino cybersecurity pros, you're in the single most valuable position in the entire labor market. You can name your terms. But if you think these industries are impressive, the top 2 will fundamentally change how you think about global work. Number 2. Content creation and digital media production. In 2026, something extraordinary has happened in the creator economy, and Hollywood, Netflix, and YouTube are scrambling to adapt. Filipino content creators, video editors, animators, and digital producers are no longer working for Western media companies. They're competing with them. Over 125,000 Filipino digital media professionals now run their own production companies, YouTube channels, TikTok studios, and content agencies, serving global audiences and earning revenue that stays in the Philippines. But here's what makes this revolutionary. They're not just creating Filipino content for Filipino audiences. They're creating English-language content for global audiences. And they're winning. Filipino-produced YouTube channels about finance, technology, health, and education are getting 50 million to 200 million views monthly. Filipino animation studios are producing content for Netflix and Amazon. Filipino video editors are the secret behind half the viral content you see online. The revenue? Over $3.8 billion flowed to Filipino creators and digital production companies in 2025 alone. But the real shift is this. Western media companies used to hire Filipinos as editors, animators, and producers. Now they're licensing content from Filipino-owned studios or competing with them for audience attention. For Western media, you just lost your cost advantage and your talent pool simultaneously. For Filipino creators, you've proven that you don't need Hollywood or New York. You can build global media empires from Quezon City, Cebu, or Davao. But all of this, the nursing, the architecture, the legal work, the cybersecurity, the content, pales in comparison to number one. The industry that's causing absolute panic in Western tech companies, because once this model proves successful, the entire offshore development model collapses. Number one, software development and AI engineering, on Filipino terms. Here's the truth that Silicon Valley, London's tech scene, and Toronto's AI labs are desperately trying to suppress. In 2026, Filipino software engineers and AI specialists are no longer accepting the old deal. Move to San Francisco, earn $180,000, pay $4,000 per month rent, work 70-hour weeks, and hope you don't get laid off. Instead, they're demanding and getting remote contracts that let them work from the Philippines while earning $140,000 to $320,000. But it goes deeper. Over 850 Philippine-based tech startups and software development firms now compete directly with US and European companies for the same clients, the same projects, and the same talent. And they're winning. Why? Because a Filipino senior engineer earning $180,000 working remotely from Manila has a quality of life that a San Francisco engineer earning $250,000 cannot touch. Lower cost of living, family nearby, better work-life balance, no visa anxiety, and increasingly, equity stakes in Philippine companies that are valued in global markets. But here's the nuclear option that has Western tech companies panicking. Filipino engineers are forming cooperatives and demanding collective bargaining terms. The Philippine Tech Guild, launched in late 2025, now represents over 23,000 software engineers who collectively negotiate with US, UK, Canadian, and Australian tech companies. Their demands: salaries equivalent to Western markets, 30-hour workweeks, equity participation, the right to work on multiple projects simultaneously, zero exclusivity clauses. And tech companies are accepting these terms because the alternative is having no senior engineers at all. For Western tech companies, you're about to pay the same salaries but lose control of when, how, and for whom Filipino engineers work. For Filipino engineers, you've just achieved what labor unions spent 100 years fighting for: the ability to dictate the terms of your own employment. So let's be absolutely clear about what's happening. For 50 years, the deal was simple. Filipinos leave, sacrifice, and build wealth for other countries. In 2026, that deal is dead. Filipinos are coming home, but they're bringing Western salaries with them. They're building industries in the Philippines that compete with, rather than serve, Western companies. And they're proving something revolutionary. You don't need to leave the Philippines to earn world-class income. For the 70% of this audience in the US, UK, Canada, Australia, your companies are losing leverage. Your cost advantages are evaporating. Your talent pipelines are drying up. And you're about to discover that the people you thought were dependent on you are actually the ones you cannot function without. For the 30% of this audience who are Filipino, the question is no longer, should I go abroad? The question is, why would I, when I can earn the same money, live near my family, and build something permanent in my own country? Now it's your turn. If you're Filipino, are you part of this shift? Have you come home, or are you planning to? If you're watching from the West, do you see this happening in your industry? Are your Filipino colleagues disappearing? Drop a comment, because this isn't just data. This is the future of work, and Filipinos are writing the rules. This isn't a trend. It's a global power shift, and it's only accelerating. Subscribe to stay ahead of the forces shaping the future. And tell us below, what global shift should we uncover next? Thanks for watching.